So I'm your very own Tanya Weiser. And, some of you I definitely know and know me, and some of you I don't. So maybe I'll say a few words about myself. And I am graduating next week from the IRC 4-year Dharma teacher training program. Yeah. Yeah. Woo! It has been quite a journey, and so I'm a student of Gil and Andreas, really. I'm an IMC baby. This has been my place of practice since, around 2008 or 9 or something like that. And I'm a therapist, and I say that because it tends to permeate the flavor of my Dharma. I tend to bring up things that I have learned as a therapist. So just to, give you all a heads up. And I teach here on Thursday nights. If you're interested in connecting with Sangha, the way I teach includes small practice groups, people talking about the topic and connecting with each other and sharing practice. And it's a lovely way to build and create a sense of connection to the Sangha here. I also teach the Queer Sangha here, which happens once a month online. So, all right. So my talk will be on my current teaching topic for Thursday nights, which has to do with not knowing. Not knowing, and tonight, or this morning, I'll weave in how not knowing supports curiosity, investigation, and ultimately the freeing of our hearts. So, I have long found that I've long been a student of dukkha, studying dukkha, suffering, contraction, clinging, in the ways that I suffer in my life. I see other people suffer. I guess it makes sense. I'm a therapist. It's kind of what I'm tuning into. And over time, the more I've studied it, the more I've recognized that the antidote or the opposite is love, the sense of presence. I don't mean love in a romantic way. I mean love in being available, present, receptive, letting the heart soften. So this inspires me a lot. I find a lot of joy when I connect, even with real difficult things, and I can do so in a way that feels loving, feels caring, feels like my heart isn't trying to protect or control a situation. So I see I've been having a lot, actually delightful time practicing with this idea of not knowing, a practice of not knowing. Even during the sit this morning, I would watch the mind. I have friends who came from the East Bay today, and I was like, is that them? Is that them? Don't know. Just sort of letting, watching how the mind starts to want to build and collect information and find out an answer, and somehow just dropping in this don't know sort of allows things to soften. And I just find that it's almost like this big open bright light, the sense of softening, opening. Oh, then what is here? It allows me to re-engage in the moment. I also think it's actually quite respectful to not know. It's respectful for me because truly every moment is different, every person is different, we're all changing, all the time things are changing, and kind of holding this idea of not knowing kind of allows yourself to open up and see and be surprised, be willing to meet and see people or things differently. It also helps me keep my mind fresh here, now, sort of just on this cusp of, what's happening now. I don't know if it happens for you, but if I think if I'm going into a meeting or I'm going into a situation, I think I know what's going to happen. There's maybe a bit of a wall or a bit of a, sort of a lack of openness that I experience. A defensiveness or an offensiveness, and that definitely doesn't support the heart in softening or in my receiving what is in front of me. So it's respectful to others, respectful to my heart, and it helps me stay interested. It's also incredibly important if we want to be curious, if we want to do one of the things the Buddha said was incredibly important, which is to investigate our experience. It's essential for us to be curious, to be investigative, but maybe not in the way that we might classically think of it as analyzing, conceptualizing, but more in a direct, investigatory, experiential kind of way. So, for all of this, mindfulness obviously is the foundation of our practice. We need to be mindful and present and aware. And mindfulness is critical if we want to live a life of non-harming. But if we're just mindful and we aren't engaging in the other teachings of the Buddha, it's not enough. It's not enough to just know, to just be aware. We can be mindful and do any kind of thing. When we're mindful in the way the Buddha taught, we're actually attuning to harm and lack of harm or wholesomeness and unwholesomeness, suffering, non-suffering, wisdom. We need to understand and want to understand what's going on, but not intellectually, not conceptually, more directly, more understanding and seeing the processes that are happening, to seeing things like, the energies of greed, hatred, and delusion and how they operate, to see how things change, impermanence. And to recognize when we've got a strong sense of a constructed self happening, or a strong sense of constructed other happening. That has to do with thinking somebody. You've constructed this person, how they are. So, it's important to think about, why are you practicing? Well, I came to the practice because I was suffering a lot. And I wanted to stop suffering. I didn't want to suffer so much. And so, for a long time early in my practice, it was just about, trying to suffer less in each moment. And so my meditation for the, kind of a solid first year of great difficulty, it might be that I spent 5 minutes and all I did was say, breathing in, I calm the body, breathing out, I calm the mind. Just trying to help myself calm down. And that's actually incredibly important because we need a calm mind. We need a relaxed body. We need to be more open and spacious for us to actually investigate in any meaningful way. So however long it takes us to do that in our sit or in our lives, That's beautiful. And then there's more. As things start to calm down, we can start to look at different things, experience the Dharma in a different way. So I'm going to talk about the Kalama Sutta. It's a sutta about how do we discern what's true, what's truth. The Kalamas were a group who lived in a village that was maybe in a throughway, or a place a lot of people traveled and stopped at, and including a lot of different kinds of spiritual teachers. So they had an abundance of teachings, but from all different perspectives. And so they started to maybe be a little bit overwhelmed with all the ideas, all the practices, all the directions that they were getting from all these different visiting teachers. And so they had the Buddha come and talk, and their question was, how do we know what is true? How do we know who is right? Well, to parallel to what maybe they were experiencing, if we step back and look, our culture is feeding us all kinds of ideas and beliefs all the time. And these ideas and beliefs start to fill us up. And when we start to believe them and collect them, we start to close ourselves off. And our culture encourages us to come to conclusions, to have answers, to know, to think, And so we start collecting what we think of as facts, which are really just stories. And we bundle them together with some magic thread to create what we think is our truth. The truth about this thing or that thing or another thing, this person, or, And some of us have a lot of experience in certain realms of our life. So we've seen hundreds of times that maybe this leads to that, so this is the conclusion. Or at least the mind tells us so. And so there's wisdom in that, collecting information and ideas and theories and our experience. But the way the mind weaves things together, it's kind of invisible to us. And, really, there's often, just as you are each so uniquely different from each other, each situation, each person, each moment of healing or each moment of suffering has its own uniqueness. And we don't know really how things are going to wind up. We don't know. We do know it will change. Something will change. This morning in my inbox, I got a beautiful poem, super short. It was super perfect for me for this morning's talk, by Rosemary Watola Traumer. And it's called One Clearing. She says, "Every day I dismantle its nest, the fear that wings darkly into my thoughts." Every day, I'm rereading it. Every day I dismantle its nest, the fear that wings darkly into my thoughts. I really love that image of the nest and how we, and that she's dismantling these fears, these thoughts, these stories, these beliefs that are collecting, creating some sort of a foundational place that we could sit in and rest on and look out from. But in the case of fear, that's probably not so skillful, not so helpful. So I love that. I think about, oh, yeah, yesterday I had this idea about theory about what this is doing and what that's doing and what's going to happen. No, let me just pull it all apart, and let these things sit individually and just sort of loosen it all up again. And we build these nests under the illusion that we actually know and see what's going on. We actually think we really know. But they're really stories we're weaving. And so much of it is drawn upon historical, associative, or, sort of some way or another fabricated information. Maybe misperception is the norm. What if we all understood misperception was the norm? Our perceptions, our habits, our views, our beliefs, our histories, all of this stuff, they all tend to reinforce themselves. And we tend to agree with our own views. And now, there are lots of wars going on over views. Lots of wars going on over views. There's this Indian lay teacher who's deceased now, but her name is Deepa Ma, or was. And she has this quote that I love. "The mind is all stories, one after another like nesting dolls. You open one, and another is inside. Open that one, and there's another story emerging. When you get to the last nesting doll, the smallest one, and open it, inside of it is what? It's empty. Nothing's there. And all around you are the empty shells of the stories of your life." Isn't that great? She was a Theravada meditation master. She really had kids, and I had a child die, and her husband die, and she lived in very poor circumstances, and she practiced. She went off to do intensive retreat, but most of her practice was in daily life and in very difficult circumstances. And so, she said mindfulness applied in every activity: speaking, shopping, ironing, cooking, caring for children. She said the whole path of mindfulness is this: whatever you are doing, be aware of it. And she was called the patron saint of householders. So to open ourselves up, right, to open these nesting dolls, to dismantle our nests, it's really helpful to not know and to be curious and to investigate. And it's not that we can exile ourselves from all of these ideas and stories and beliefs. I wish I could. I wish I could say I'm not going to ingest this. I wish I could say that I could tell the mind not to remember something. It doesn't work like that, Things just come in. We get told all kinds of stories. We watch movies. We watch TV shows. We're conditioned by our parents and our teachers and all these things. And so we just need to know we're this big bundle of things that's ready to get all turned into nesting dolls. So we can't exile ourselves from this. We just need to know what's going on and be curious. And when we start to see the mind gathering up all the data, as much as possible, don't know. There's a neurologist, neuroscientist who, I think her name was Lisa Barrett, but I'm not sure if that's correct, but I read an article by her, and she described, the brain is an organ, right? Like any other organ in our body. And she said, it's our prediction organ. It's always predicting. It's taking all this stuff we have both willingly and choicefully inputted, as well as unwilling have, been inputted into us. And it draws on all of it. And from that, it makes kind of assumptions. It predicts. It's a great thing until it's not. So don't just believe your thoughts. Test them, investigate them. And so this is bringing me back to the Kalama Sutta and what the Buddha taught. One of the beautiful things that the Buddha taught in this sutta, in my view, is, these practitioners are asking, how do we know what is true? How do we know what is true? Truth. And the Buddha doesn't say, go write a thesis. He doesn't say, think and analyze and cognize and imagine and evaluate and judge. Instead, the Buddha teaches us how to look directly at our experience and to use the measure of suffering or the absence of suffering to help us determine that which is leading toward what he would call true Dharma. In order to notice and be aware of whether something is causing, more suffering for us or others, we have to be embodied. It's not something that you intellectually evaluate. It's something that you recognize, you experience, you sense. You have to notice how you're being impacted. You have to notice the quality of your heart. You have to notice if your mind is contracting. And, is there aversion in my mind? There's this thread of not liking, not wanting, anger, hatred. Anxiety and fear are part of aversion. Fear because it's something we don't want, we're afraid of. And, with greed, it's all about trying to get or hold on to or control, right? It's all about wanting. And I was thinking about that this morning just from my lens of, can I love or not? Because a lot of people are like, well, but I'm attached, I love, I want this person, I want this thing, But when I think about it, if I'm really caught up in wanting, what does that feel like? For me, it's like, I'm really focused on what I want to take in, bring in, keep. And when I'm relating that way, I might know I love, I might know I care, but is the heart really soft enough to open? Is this heart really receptive? I think it gets compromised, contracted in the effort. And with delusion, we're just all caught up in stories. So if we're not really connected, what's really going on, we aren't really caring and loving what's here. We can't. We're not really seeing what's here. All right, back to the Kalamas. So the Kalamas were really confused. They were really complaining and saying, this one says this and this one says that, and how are we supposed to know, and blah, 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 blah. And the Buddha said something beautiful in the beginning. Maybe it has to do with, a little bit with not knowing. And the Buddha said, of course you are uncertain, Kalamas. Isn't that nice? They're trying to know, and he's saying, of course you're uncertain. Of course you don't know. Of course you're in doubt. When there's reason for doubt, uncertainty is born. And so this is the case. Oh, I relax just imagining that, right? Of course. And then the Buddha went on to say, don't go by reports, legends, tradition, scripture, logic, conjecture, inference, analogies, agreement with your views, probability, or the thought, this contemplative is my teacher. So the Buddha is even saying, whoever their teacher is, including him, don't go by just what I say. And this is one of the things that I think that made Buddhism so accessible to me, was that I wasn't expected or required to just believe what I was being taught. That was really, really important for me to be able to really enter deeply into this practice. Incredibly important for me. So, we need to evaluate for ourselves, well, let me come to the next thing he says and I'll go back to that. And then, so he's laying the ground. Of course, you don't know. You don't know, right? It's impossible to know with all these different things conflicting, right? And it's, of course, you're doubting and uncomfortable. And then he says, don't just go by what's said or has been done, no matter who said it, no matter how much evidence you have, no matter how predictable it seems. And then he says this, when you yourself know, these things are bad, these things are blamable, unskillful, and unwholesome. So we have old language here. But when you know this is not good, this is not healthy. And he says, then these things are censored, and that they're censored by the wise, undertaken and observed. These things lead to harm and ill will. When they are hurting us, when they are hurting others, abandon them. When you yourself know. So the Buddha in this is, one, empowering each person, right, to engage and reflect. And he's also really beautifully simplifying what we need to know directly, what we need to connect with. And, you suffer, I suffer, right? I suffer, you suffer. Just like you, I suffer, right? We all suffer, but all of us, because of our own conditioning, suffer slightly uniquely. So we need to study ourselves. We need to notice, when we're in unhealthy mental and emotional territory. This is so beautiful. For me, this is beautiful, and it's so simple. So, one of his key teachings is that greed, hatred, and delusion cause harm. So we can just check in if there's greed, hatred, and delusion and notice sometimes it's not clear. Maybe I need to not like this or not want this or I want this. But then, okay, is it causing harm? Is it making me unwell? Is it making someone else unwell? So for me, I might give an example of my child, worrying about my child, my adult child. Is my worry, while it's from the love of a mama, is my worry making me sick? Is it making me unwell? Is it contracting my heart? Is it binding my mind? Is it turning my stomach? Is it affecting my irritability? Well, if so, it's probably leading to harm. Right? It is. I'm harming myself with my views, my ways that I'm holding things. So that tells me there's some way I'm looking at the situation or relating it that I need to abandon. There's some other way to hold it or be with it that will allow my mind to relax and my heart to relax and my body to be free. The Buddha is telling us to know the quality of our heart and our mind, to use that as the reference point for whether we want to pursue or abandon something. So after we come to this understanding for ourselves, the Buddha says, know for yourself and listen to the wise. When you know for yourselves and you can listen to the wise, these things are skillful, blameless, praised by sensible people, and when you undertake them, they lead to welfare and happiness. Then you should acquire them and keep them. So the Buddha is not telling us to all be off in our own la-la land, right? Coming to our own, completely own individual conclusions, but rather to also rely on those who are wise. The teachings that are wise that have helped us. And my relationship to various teachings changes over time too. So, it's also always wise to keep checking in about what we're referencing. And he doesn't say you have to believe the wise ones absolutely, right? But use this as another gauge to help yourself. So what we come to know and see is not just me and not just another, not them, not me, but both. Both self-knowledge and the knowledge of the wise. In another sutta, the Buddha is teaching his son Rahula about how to do this. How do we know whether what we're doing is causing harm or not? And it's not just this intellectual analysis, it's not a predictive thing, but we might employ those things, but we don't rely solely upon them. So he tells his son, anytime he's about to do something, to take an action that might be significant, to reflect. Before you do it, reflect. Is this causing harm to myself? Is it causing harm to others? Or is it causing harm to both? Okay, so before I, go do something important and say something important, I want to reflect on these things. And then the Buddha says, okay, great. And then while you're doing it, while it's happening, reflect again. Have mindfulness in the middle of it. And reflect, is this causing harm to me? Is it causing harm to another? Or is it causing harm to both? Okay, and so if it's not, the Buddha says, proceed, keep going. Great. Enjoy, right? And afterwards. So maybe you think it's not causing harm, you go through it, you still don't think it's causing harm, and afterwards you still pause and reflect. Maybe many times after, because sometimes we don't recognize the harm until later. And if it was all goodness, it's great to reflect and savor the goodness many, many times. Many, many times. Asking the same questions. It's, This is our Dharma compass, our North Star. This is such a beautiful, again, accessible thing to do, which is to notice, can I love? Am I present? Am I open, receptive, taking in, being willing? Or am I contracted and hurting and closed off? Am I suffering? I think it's something that, I know I reference a lot, but not enough. I think that I too often overlook how I allow myself to suffer. And I don't think I'm alone. And we need to look in all areas. Maybe we do work in our lives that's really meaningful and important work, really helpful work. But if we aren't paying attention to how much we're trying to do, or how much pressure we're putting on ourselves, or how much we're taking on, we're letting ourselves suffer, probably, most likely. We need to notice it in all the realms, even if they're what we feel are completely wholesome realms. We need to keep taking care of ourselves, be the guardians of our hearts. Pay attention to stress early. It'll help us make wiser decisions. Not to blindly just accept our responsibilities or concerns as what is most important. So do you think you're paying close enough attention to your suffering? To where you're, putting yourself in stress, harm, sway, or harming others? Is there some nest you're building? A nest of fear? Stacking dolls? Maybe pick one that you're constructing, that you've been building. Maybe bring it to mind. Maybe let yourself see all the little tangled up pieces. Whether you like the nesting doll or the nest, all the things that are getting packed together. Just take a moment to reflect on it and notice what you feel in your body. And what if you say, don't know, don't know, don't know, I don't know. What if not knowing releases the glue that binds it all together? Can you imagine that? Letting the pieces soften. Deconstructing your nest. I'll read Rosemary's poem again. Every day I dismantle its nest, the fear that wings darkly into my thoughts. Every day I dismantle its nest, the fear that wings darkly into my thoughts. We have a couple of minutes. I'm happy to take questions, or if people want to come up, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. So just, is there a question or a comment anyone would like to share? Ah, Susan, right behind you, Martha.
Wow, Tanya, you're on fire.
Oh.
I really appreciate so much this image of the nest. I'm like a very keen gardener, and every now and again after a windstorm, it's not unusual to have a nest blown down. And when you see a nest, it's all these little pieces of grass and feather, and somehow having this image of the little twig, the little thing landing in me, and just gently let it go instead of this weaving of the storyline. Just so helpful. Thank you.
Oh, great, Susan. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody have a hard time imagining dismantling your nest? Yeah. Maybe I'll teach you one of the things that I do to help me. It actually comes out of my practice with right effort. So in my right hand, I have the nest. That all that you were focusing on, all that's sort of tangled up together. And, all that sort of contraction, just let yourself feel it and hold it. And then when you're ready, in your left hand, there's not knowing. Not knowing and opening, relaxing into not knowing. And just let the not knowing grow a bit. Let it fill up your hand and the space around it. Just not knowing's huge. It's way bigger than the nest, the knowing. Way bigger. And then when you're ready, slide the not knowing under the nest. Take your hands and put the right hand above the left hand, the nest being held by this huge, amazing field of not knowing. And let the nest rest. Let it be held in that field. Don't try and get rid of the nest. Just hold it in the beautiful expansiveness of not knowing. Let it be saturated by not knowing. Let it rest in not knowing. It can be that simple. We just might have to do it every day. Right? Effort, right, is, one of the ways the Buddha described it was in the time of the Buddha, they didn't have nails, so they used holes and pegs to build things. And so, we're building this nest. So the Buddha would say, when the peg is rotten, use a new good peg, pound it in and replace the old one. And then you have the healthy rod in there holding things together. So what if not knowing can be that replacement thing holding things together or allowing them to dissipate? So maybe that'll help for those of you who are having a hard time. I hope it does. So thank you for your kind attention. All right.